key takeaways, some value addition. So our purpose of doing today's webinar was, as Karan very rightly said, that there's so much happening right now, and we are grappling with these, new realities. The major one being that human beings, as a species, we may be the most intelligent ones, but we certainly don't have so much control as we thought we did, and our lives are still controlled by the larger universe and forces of nature, of course. So our idea of doing this was, now there are some new realities we are coming to terms with. How does that impact businesses? What does it mean for you as an individual, and also for your business, for the companies, for the business scenario, and also how the world was coming closer even pre-COVID, how we were all collaborating, partnering, and distances were reducing. Now, what would that mean in the new scenario? So, well, jumping right to it, what we intend to do here is, we are trying to integrate environmental and social sustainability practices into the global agenda. Now, that has already been done by the UN. We have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals which very wonderfully cover all the aspects of environment and society which are relevant and which impact businesses. But now there is evidence to it that we have seen. And coming right to it, the next slide. So there were certain risks which were identified even pre-COVID. If you look at it, there were extreme weather conditions. We would see that natural disasters were becoming more and more frequent. There were tsunamis in one place, floods in the other, drought in another place, and businesses, communities, everyone was getting affected. But somehow there was still, we were kind of behaving like ostriches. We were burying our heads under the sand, because if there is a bushfire in Australia, it doesn't affect me sitting here in India, and I will think about it when I come to it, or when it directly impacts me. So that was a kind of thought process that everyone had. Now, when COVID happens, and it impacts the entire, Nandini, we need to go back here. So climate action, climate crisis, natural disasters, man-made disasters, everything was localized. The impact may vary, the scale may have varied, but we were just not coming to terms with the fact that we need to take action. Now, when COVID happened, it happened globally, and it impacted globally. It kind of scared us. Now it is kind of pushing us to take action, because we know that this is not the end, unfortunately, because there's a lot more that can come, that we can make happen if we don't take action on time. So there could be COVID-19 2021 also, but also apart from that, there is climate crisis, which is staring us in the eyes. Next slide, please. I'm not able to. Okay. So, well, it's not all bad news. The good news is that India had signed the NDCs, and we are doing pretty well. India is one of the only 6 countries which are on track to meet their NDCs. So, which is a great thing. So we had 3 commitments, out of which we are well on track for 2 of these commitments. We have been, so I'll tell you what we have been doing well in the last few years. We had the commitment to achieve 40% of our power capacity through non-fossil fuel sources. We are well on our way. We have already reduced our fossil fuel consumption by 21%. We have a 165 gigawatt target for renewables under the Paris Agreement, out of which 83 gigawatts has been achieved already. So that's some great news there, and we are already looking at cleaner fuels, cleaner energy efficiency, green cover. So that has, over the last year, I've seen with the companies that we work with as well, it has become one of their top agendas. And I only see that improving post COVID, and I'll tell you why. Next slide. So the COVID-19 pandemic is a global emergency, as we know, and it's bringing devastation to millions around the world, impacting lives and jobs and grinding much of the global economy to a halt. Now, it calls on us to come together with compassion and humanity and to act radically and decisively to protect what's most important. So, there are several different kinds of disruptions that have happened. You look at multi-sector impact. So you look at businesses which are directly getting impacted: retail, real estate, education, entertainment, restaurants, several other businesses as well, travel, of course. uh, there's workforce disruption. Of India's workforce of about 471 million, only 19% are covered by social security. Two-thirds have no formal employment contract, and at least 100 million are migrant workers. It's expected that about 40 crores of the population would be pushed below poverty line because of this, of India's population. Safety versus sustainability, now that has become a big debate. Single-use food packaging has risen in the last few weeks because that is considered safer as compared to other kinds of packaging. It has definitely impacted a lot of SDGs negatively, which means that there's decent work and economic growth that is badly impacted. But on the other hand, we also see, now to bring up something positive, SDG 9, which is industry, innovation and infrastructure, that is expected to improve progressively because people do realize the need to have better technologies, go towards digitization, and improved um, uh, areas where where you could work remotely rather than working in the conventional ways that India was very used to doing earlier.
So, just one pause, Anu, since you mentioned that the use of single-use plastic actually has risen in the last couple of weeks, and otherwise there was such a big case against eliminating that. Do you
Yeah.
think a lot of lessons will come for the longer term, that otherwise there was a belief system that we are following, but the COVID-19 impact will actually change our thought process and might just give us a much, force us to look at a much larger macro picture, that maybe in terms of crisis, something that we thought was a devil could have some benefits, and if it dealt on the waste end properly, then it need not be eliminated completely.
Yes, absolutely. And we cannot eliminate plastics, for example. It's very much a part of our lives. It's essential. But at the same time, we just need to change our lifestyles a little bit. So how difficult is it to segregate, for example? Now that we are more organized in our lives, and we are at home, all of us, segregation is happening much better, I can see. There is no more plastic strewn around on the roads. You don't see so much garbage on the roads because people are not venturing out. How difficult is it to do in regular life? It's not difficult at all. It's just a mindset. So uh, I mean, even stray dogs have nothing to eat right now because people don't throw food anymore. So
That's the part.
yeah, so is it not possible for us to follow that? Of course, feed the stray dogs separately.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I mean to say is, why do we have to be so careless in our lifestyles? When we can be so organized also. We have been surviving very well being at home. Of course, our economies, our businesses are impacted, and we cannot do this on a long term. So I mean, look at Ganga River right now. They say that it's drinking water quality. It's that clean. So we don't want that such huge disruptions should come in to bring in any positive impact to the environment or to the society.
So
What
it is like fasting, no? The on and off. If you do fasting, the body remains fit. So if you
Yeah.
can have a lockdown on a regular interval voluntarily for
Hmm.
at least a few days, or I mean, so a lot of, I'm really looking forward as you highlight these things as well, because I think interestingly in the morning we were discussing that. So I think one thing, how significant is the benefit that we have seen in the last few days? Too significant that we can relax for another 5-6 years, or
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely. But what is very significant is that we have, it's no longer imaginary. So it's like the doctor telling you that you will get better, if you take a certain medicine, but you are like, okay, we'll see. You're not convinced. You might think that he's just trying to sell you a medicine or a treatment, but now you have seen the treatment with your own eyes. So I mean, as a population, as citizens of India, now we should be more convinced about this, that whatever the climate activists, the environmentalists have been telling us for years, that the Earth's status would improve if we just cut back a little. It's actually being seen. The impact is being seen. In fact, I have a friend who was extremely allergic to pollution, and we used to tell him very often that, you know, you need to get out of Delhi if you need to get better, because he would fall sick every 2 weeks, and he would just not be able to breathe, and, you know, several health problems. And he's been doing absolutely fine in the last 1 month, and he's saying that whatever said and done, I am happy that this has happened because I'm feeling so much better. So the effects can be seen. There are people who have had several immunity issues, health issues, and they are feeling better. You can see the Himalayas from
So,
Jalandhar, they
so
say now.
this gives a great head start. Now, what could be the immediate sustainable goals? Like, if you can take us through that also, that, you know,
Yeah,
organizations
so
can set for themselves. Yes.
sure. So I will not get into the details of this. These are the potential SDG impacts that can be seen because of COVID. We can share this with the audience later on, or they may have seen this already. This is a UN SDA document. Moving on, Nandini. Also, this has been discussed several times: what went wrong, what could have caused COVID, and how can we avoid that in the future. So I won't spend too much time on this, but we can just run through this maybe. So industrial farming, illegal wildlife trade, lack of awareness amongst the general citizens, faulty regulations, massive loss of biodiversity. So all of these have led to a calamity like this. And perhaps we need to look into national regulations, not just for us, but for every country, and especially G20. They could come together and think of some ways to curb this in the future. Moving on. Yeah. So what we have tried to do here is just make a forecast of what could be the 5 mega trends going forward, and what are the risks associated with these trends, and how we could, of course, eliminate the risk, but also tap into the opportunities that there are with each of these risks. So I'm sure everyone here would agree that with every risk comes an opportunity if you're able to tackle it efficiently. So the first trend that we have been seeing, in fact, over the last few years is huge amount of loss happening because of natural disasters. So resilience now equates to how efficiently bounce back when a disaster hits, but also that means adaptation. So having adapt measures, but also how much you're able to mitigate it, how much you're able to avoid it. Now, whatever damage we have done to the environment and whatever consequences there would be of that, we have to deal with those, which means that we need to have infrastructure and resources in place in order to be able to adapt to this new normal. Just some facts for you to see here, I mean, I'm sure everyone is aware of this, but look at the magnitude of impact we've seen in the last few years. 2018 was the fourth costliest year for natural disasters in the history of mankind. And the worst damage came from US hurricanes. The cost expected to be above $57 billion. So, and the same with India as well. We may not have as much data and as many numbers in India, but the impact is almost the same. So just last year in Pune, we had floods one after the other. We had floods in September and then again in October. October is in fact supposed to be a hot month in Pune. And the businesses were shut down. So it's the common man who's suffering, right? And we cannot deny the impact anymore, is what I'm trying to say. So well, we as a team were more prepared to work from home. Our work did not get disrupted as much, but there were companies which could not function, which faced huge losses because because of the floods, the offices couldn't open, resources were damaged. So yeah, so I mean, these are the things that we need to be prepared for now. And as businesses, we need to be more resilient to this. We need to evaluate strategies that are in place to tackle exposure to global warming, embed climate change into enterprise risk management. Now, that is something which is lacking right now. What's very important currently is to have our CapEx and OpEx include natural disaster management also and crisis management. So, in fact, we are doing sustainability assessment for companies currently. And actually, natural disaster management and crisis management as one of the material topics before COVID happened. And important, this happens once in a while, you know. So it's not important to keep this in as material topic. And just 2 weeks later, the whole scenario had changed, and now, of course, that is on. So I mean, what I'm saying is essentially, why take action only once you start seeing you start feeling the pain? Why not take some action or precaution before it happens? Am I going too fast, too much? Does anyone have questions or comments? I'd like to hear from you if you have any experiences to share.
Or should we take that at later? But in case everything is fine, you know, there's a reaction emoji at the bottom, so you can just do this. I know I saw a couple of people doing this, so I think you're good to go. I think you should just continue.
Okay, and I am receiving some messages on my phone saying that we want to join, unable. So,
yeah, can the ID and password be shared?
Okay, where do you want? Okay, the audio is not clear. No, I think there is some bandwidth issue at your end. Is because I think the last 15-20 seconds there was some disturbance. So what I can do is I can also all participants, I'm just switching off the video because that will ensure that, you know, there is more bandwidth.
I'm just sending this.
Should we continue?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mega trend that we see now. Into the details of this, I'm sure everybody's been talking about it, and you know exactly what is happening. The only point I want to make here is that climate action is happening and nobody can deny it. And on company business strategy if they want to last beyond. I mean, Australia, which were one of the worst climate change induced.
No, I think there is some bandwidth issue that your voice is breaking.
Okay, should I switch off my video?
No problem. I think if it helps, sure.
Is it better? Slightly better now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. So we've seen an estimated 1 billion animals have been killed and some endangered species have been driven to extinction. Business community is looking at climate change differently now for sure. And ignoring this impact will now have severe repercussions later. So now coming to the opportunities that So as I was saying earlier, we have been like ostriches burying our heads in the sand. Moving on to risk, what is the risk associated with climate change? This could lead to a green swan effect on the next slide. Climate change poses new challenges to central banks, regulators, supervisors, increased frequency of natural disasters and disruption that we discussed earlier. So now what is happening is that all investors, all large corporations, before working with anyone down the value chain, they are looking at how responsible a company can be considered, or how well prepared are they for any sort of business disruption. So that would take us to the next mega trend, which is supply chain, having a sustainable supply chain. I think that's mega trend number 4. But every organization, every section of the society, nobody can response. No, corporates will respond. Point is that
Anu,
for their own, we have to look
Anu, can you hear me?
resilient resources, and yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So now again, your voice is clear, but I think there's some bandwidth issue. It seems just people are messaging that they can't hear you. But yeah, continue. I think now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry about this, but I don't know how to help out here. Well, just stop me anytime you feel that the
Sure.
bandwidth.
Now you're clear. You can continue.
Okay. So there is this long-term sustainability opportunity that we are looking at. If we address this issue right at the core, contributions to decarbonization. Now, every country has a target to become carbon neutral by a certain year, to reduce their carbon emissions. How do you contribute to that? See, when you're contributing towards national emissions, you are not just doing something good for the environment. You're doing something good for yourself, because as part of your measures, you end up reducing your costs. You end up mitigating risk, huge amount of risk associated with a rise in global temperatures, rise in costs because of certain resources getting more extinct or expensive in the future. I'll give you one great example here. So there was a company, a steel manufacturing company, which was overnight asked to reduce its water consumption by 60%. But thankfully, the top management of this company was extremely proactive. And without any kind of regulatory requirement or any kind of pressure from anywhere, the MD, CEO of the company were proactively looking at measures to reduce their resource consumption, and not just from water point of view, but from other resources also. Now, when this regulation came in overnight, that came in because Maharashtra was facing a huge drought issue in 2016, and they somehow had to address it. And the local community was raising a lot of problem for all the industries in that area, because they were consuming a lot of water. Now, just because this particular company was prepared for such sort of possibility, they had all the resources in place. 60% cut in water did not impact their business at all. And in fact, they were they received accolades for their proactive decisions and putting a plan in place. So their business was not affected. They received huge brand visibility and enhancement because of their measures. So these are the things I'm talking about. Now, protection of local ecosystems and biodiversity. Now, that is again, slowly finding its way into the sustainability strategy of a company. Implementing sustainability projects with long-term growth potential. Now, what we need to look at here is, so I would like to mention something here. Nandini, can we go to slide number 19, please? Yeah. So how can corporates create value? We we need to look into need assessment. So I'm not saying that if one company is looking into water, you must also look into water. If one has signed their science-based targets, you must also just jump and do the same thing. You first need to see what is important, what is relevant for your sector, for your company, for this particular industry, what your peers are doing, what are the global trends, and what is the benefit of doing it in the end. uh, I mean, it's such a thing. It requires so much of time and effort, and of course, takes away from your bandwidth, from your business bandwidth. It has to add value in the end. That is what is important. So when you start building your sustainability strategy, it's important that you see what is required, what is critical for your company. And there, a preliminary gap assessment or an initial assessment would come in very handy, because you would be taking an informed decision and not just jumping right into it with a herd mentality. And then you determine your priorities. Now, for example, you have 5 top priorities that come up. What is it that will give you maximum and instant benefit? Because once you get that, your stakeholders would be on board as well. So today you might decide to do something, like for example, the CEO of a company might decide that they want to become carbon neutral by 2030, but people down the line might just think it's unnecessary, or it's an added responsibility for them without really any value add. So why not go for something which can start showing you results within a year? Once these people down the line, once your value chain, your customers, your suppliers, everybody starts seeing the impact, they will follow suit as well. And then you will not just have your company as sustainable, you will have the entire value chain as sustainable. And that is where the larger benefit lies. You saving 5 pennies makes no difference, but imagine 5 million people saving 5 pennies. I mean, that's the kind of effect we can have if we are able to set the right examples. Yeah, so stakeholder engagement. Now, again, that's very, very important. And in fact, I feel very strongly about this, and I'm sorry if I get emotional here, but CSR is such, I mean, it has such huge potential, but all it is looked at as, because of this regulation, is the section 135 that we have as a regulation in India, it's just seen as a liability. CSR can play such an important role in achieving your sustainability goals. Stakeholder engagement. Now, why is it that for most companies, whatever the employees are completely unaware of what the company is doing in terms of sustainability and CSR? Why aren't they made a part of it? Imagine the kind of contribution one can have from the employees, because first of all, they know your business the best. So you don't need to teach them technically how to save energy. For example, if there's a shop floor and you want to implement some energy efficiency measures, I would come in as a consultant or as an advisor and tell you that, from this peer review point of view, from your sectoral point of view, you can achieve a 20 to 30% reduction in your energy consumption. But who is the one who's actually going to implement it? It's your employee. It's the person who's working on the ground. So make him a part of it. When you have your quality management system audits, why is it just just one person dealing with the audit team? Why is it not the process head? Why is it not the production head? Because they are the ones who are actually able to achieve the results. And it just does not remain as a document in the end. So then again, having a robust CSR strategy. Now, again, going back to the same point, why can't CSR be aligned with your sustainability and your business goals? So there is so much more value in it. You can set aside budgets for your marketing, for your business development. Why not set aside CSR as a part of your marketing budget and not just a regulatory requirement? Because it can bring you so much, bring in so much, benefit for the company itself. So it gives you, am I audible?
Yes, very much. Continue.
Okay. So, the best strategy would be where you have your business goals, you have your sustainability goals, and you have your CSR goals all aligned together. And then whatever is possible to do from CSR point of view, whatever the regulation allows, you go ahead and do that. And then whatever is to be done within your boundaries, you align your sustainability with that, and that then goes into your business scorecard, your balance scorecard, and that's how you will have a holistic strategy, is what I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has a different view.
I'm sure people are waiting to share their views, but first, but
Okay.
very interesting. But I cannot agree more is because one thing that we observe as a waste management company is there is no data. Like, so for one, if one has to really start implementing, like if I have to understand that, what is my contribution on environment, whether it is positive or negative, it has to start from data gathering. So I really feel that maybe this is a good time where companies say that, and like you rightly pointed out that 2018 was the costliest year because of the natural disaster. And if you don't have contingency planning for it from an environment perspective, then you will face the repercussions. So I think maybe it is a good time. Do you think it's a good time to start with at least capturing the data, putting things in place, goals in place?
It should have been done yesterday, but yeah, now that that's not possible, it's highly important that we start capturing data. So the problem is, the moment there is some pressure, uh, companies would suddenly wake up to this, and they will say that we want to set target. And sometimes I'm saying some companies, without having the right information or background, will set a certain target. Say for example, we will be carbon neutral by 2030. And how do you know you will be carbon neutral by 2030? You don't have the right data. You don't know what your current emissions are.
Just a random number that they have thrown, and that's it.
कि उसने किया तो हम भी करेंगे, it's like that. So but obviously then you're bound to fail in your target. So even if it is not 2040, make it 2050 if it is doable for you, but at least start with collecting the right amount of data.
So
And yeah,
in fact, this is what we were sharing, that at our organization also, what we are trying to do is that even if it is 5 kilos and 10 kilos, there is a dashboard where we try to put data in place so that it gives you a perspective, and then you can start working towards it. But can you also highlight about that there could be a sustainability fund, like there could be a fund where even if it is say 5 rupees, I'm just taking a very small figure, or maybe a small percentage of your profit, but you start saving it so that if at all there are any disasters. I think Anu, there's a very interesting thing that you spoke in the morning about how 10% of the companies will do better. So if you can, maybe during a presentation you can highlight that as well.
sure. So what I was trying to say is that why wait for a regulation to come in and tell you that this is what you need to do for environment, for being a responsible company, or for any other purpose. Don't you set aside budgets for um, all your other functions, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, your L&D, or marketing? So why not set aside budgets for sustainability and CSR, because that is what ensures your business sustainability. So I think we've got the meaning or definition of sustainability all wrong. The moment we hear this word, we think of something that you're doing for the world, something you're doing for the planet. That's not the case. You're doing it for yourself. So that is what we need to get right. And even if it is 2%, 1% of your budget, at least start doing something, because then once you see the value add, then nobody has to force you to do it once you get the right outcomes from it. So so now moving on to the next point, which is impact assessment. So here I feel it is so important, no matter what initiative you're doing, no matter how small or how big, Nandini back. You need to ensure that impact assessment is being done for those initiatives, because you don't know how effective your project is unless you do it. So I see companies setting aside 1 crore of budget towards a certain initiative, and then they say that next year we'll be doing 2 crores. But unless you know how effective your project is, whether it needs any course correction, whether you're getting the right outcomes, how do you decide that you're going to just scale it up next year? So those are the things you get to know only through an effective impact assessment, and not just a tick in a box. Then innovation, digitization, automation, well, anyone is aware of it right now. We could be having this workshop, this webinar as a seminar right now, but we are doing it online. So, and why is that? Because we have kind of been forced to do it. And I had to learn about Zoom today. I had been using other platforms, by the way. I was not so ignorant. Let me just point that out. But yeah, so I mean, we are learning new techniques. We are getting more familiar, more friendly with technology, and that is the need of the hour. I already mentioned integrating corporate responsibility into CapEx and OpEx decisions, quality of a CSR report, so again, a sustainability report or a CSR report, first of all, doesn't reach the right audience right now, is what I feel for most companies. Or they don't cover the right content, things that you should be communicating to your stakeholders. Because it's not about creating noise about something good that you're doing. So in India, we also have that mentality that if right hand does something good, the left hand should not know about it. But that's not the case here. You're doing it because first of all, you want to inspire other people to do it. Second, you want to you can have so many opportunities to collaborate, and collaboration is the key in such times. We are going through a major slump in economy right now. So my organization on its own cannot provide all the solutions. I should be collaborating with other companies who can provide complementary solutions, so that the costs are less and efficiency is much higher. The value addition for the client is also much higher. And there is no harm. It's like a symbiotic relationship that we can develop. So these are the things that you need to look into. Then invest in R&D. That is very, very important. And in India, especially, for some reason, companies do not invest as much as they should be in research and development. Yeah. Next slide. That was a lot of content to share in one slide. Next one, please. So these are just some suggestions on what the CSR focus areas could be post COVID-19, because see, it's not just the immediate solutions that we need to give because of this crisis. Now, all of the money is going into either PM CARES fund, or companies are investing in projects which are providing food and shelter to the homeless and migrants and those people and these people who are underprivileged and really vulnerable at this moment. But and which is of course a great thought and must be done. But also the risk here is that we might just exhaust all our funds doing this, providing immediate solutions, and not look at a long-term sustainable solution. And that could cause huge crisis again, because after 2 months, 3 months, if the economy doesn't pick up, it will take its own time to pick up, right? Everybody's predicting that 2021 is going to be slow. Are we prepared for that? What happens to the livelihood of these people who've lost their jobs, who have lost their homes? What happens to them? So have we set aside any funds to make sure that these people are able to sustain? So while we set aside a certain amount of our CSR budget or our sustainability budget towards providing immediate relief, we must also set aside something for sustainable projects. And yeah, these are some of the ideas we could look into. I'll just leave you all to read this. Okay, so post-COVID, the need of the moment is basic human decency and immediate social response, which includes working under focus areas like capacity building, employee engagement, counseling. That is another important aspect internally that companies would need to look into. Your employees are feeling vulnerable and anxious right now. Some of them may have to do with pay cuts or even layoffs in certain sectors. So how do you still ensure that they are able to survive? They are able to at least find employment elsewhere. There is some upskilling happening. So, I mean, at least those companies which can afford to do it have to look at these internal measures as well, where they are able to do some handholding for those people who may be facing certain impacts right now. Then corporates need to identify issues and possible interventions to start solving these. For example, like one estimate by the Indian Development Review suggests that poor households in urban areas would need about 12,000 rupees per month for about 3 months, of which 8,000 would pay for food and 4,000 for other expenses, including healthcare. The distressed in rural areas may require about 10,000 per month, which includes 6,000 for food expenses. Now, where does all that come from? So how do we ensure? One thing is we start procuring locally. We need to ensure that our supply chains are sturdy and they are well taken care of. We design social programs to fight all our societal um, like countries like India and Bangladesh, we are known for child labor, malnutrition. So things like that need to be more seriously looked into currently. We need to establish food stability and emergency relief. So there are so many ideas we could just discussing about that.
Yeah, so in fact, we have such an active audience. I had just put a message saying that if at all there are any questions, so they have all started. So we have maybe to summarize, what could be the larger immediate steps do you think maybe at a company level and a country level? In fact, I'll just share this one example with you, which I had read long back. I think with maybe those were initial signs that I was also very passionate about environment, about how a chocolate company in a UK was suffering so many losses because of the weather changes every year. How would they procure the cocoa seeds, and how would the supply chain get impacted? And I think one thing that you rightly brought out is I see there are a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of companies who are ultimately, I think it is about yourselves as an organization. If you don't set up these processes in place, ultimately it's going to come affect you. Like we were talking about a few companies today morning, how are they just better equipped to face a natural disaster or else a man-made disaster, maybe COVID-19, if it is not a biological weapon as they say, and it's a man-made disaster, then how these companies are but better. So according to you, what could be the say the next 5, 6, 7 immediate steps that you think that organizations can take, should take, to ensure that they are stabilizing? And I think one very valid point that you brought out was voluntarily, that that how is it that we see this as an investment so that we are self-sustainable. So if you can highlight that.
I would say there are about 3 or 4 things that we need to definitely put in place right now. One is data monitoring. And having consistent data monitoring. So in most, even the largest of corporates, you would see that every department has its own way of monitoring data. So if you were to, for example, go and take travel data also from each department, they would give it to you in a different format. So, I mean, that's such a simple thing to manage, right? If you think about it. Now, tomorrow, if I come and tell you that I'm going to monitor all your emissions, all your expenses, and your footprint related to travel. So provide all this data to me. It should be simple, because you would say that, yeah, of course we have all the bills and we have all the data available with all the departments. But once you start looking into it, it's a complete mess. And that's just one example. There are hundreds or even more such parameters that you need to look into when you start looking at your sustainability, business sustainability. Now, so obviously step 0 here is to have a common format, to have a structure in place wherein you would start collecting data and maintaining it year on year. Sure. So that you can also then monitor how much you're improving every year. You may not want to look at all 100 parameters today, you may want to look at only 5, but moving forward, you would want to have a more holistic view of it. So that's one. Second, involve all your stakeholders. So when you talk about sustainability, first of all, it makes no sense to do it in a silo, so just for the sustainability head to know what is being done. Sustainability head on his own cannot do anything substantial, not even substantial, anything useful, I would say, unless he's supported by the production head and finance head and everybody else, because they are the ones who are actually responsible for running the business, and who are the ones facing the stakeholders. So get everyone on board internally, and then look at all your external stakeholders as well, your supply chain, your customers, the community, everyone has to be on board with your agenda, sustainability agenda. Third is, of course, as I said, set aside a budget. How much ever it may be. It depends on your ambition and your scale, of course. So set aside a budget for your sustainability ambition. And communications. That's again very important. So there are companies which are doing quite a bit, but their stakeholders know nothing about it, and they lose out on the benefits they can get. From their stakeholders knowing what they're doing, or even getting them to participate in it. Then impact assessment, reporting. All of this is essential because that's where you consolidate everything together, and that's where it shows the big picture to everyone. Yeah, so I think I've covered the points that were coming to my mind, but you tell me if I've missed out on something. Of course, natural disaster management. Of course, there also a certain amount of your budget needs to be assigned, and it has to be a part of your capex and opex. You need to have an adaptation and resilience strategy.
So this is also like a personal question. Since you are you have access to so much data, do we see a lot of natural disasters also occurring more frequently in the near future?
Absolutely, and you see year on year they are just increasing.
Okay, so I think this minor correction also doesn't make any big impact in the larger scheme of things.
It just gives you, it's like a trailer, it shows you what you can achieve by just cutting down a little bit.
If you look at it from a positive angle.
Yes, yeah, from a positive angle because so we shut down for 3 weeks and we saw such amazing results.
Yes.
In nature. So if we could just, without impacting our business, if we could just decide to shut down twice a month, how would that impact our lives? If it was a forced shutdown, say 2 Sundays or 1 Saturday and 1 Sunday in a month, do you think it would really impact our lives so much? I don't think so.
And I really feel even the shutdown is extreme. I think if we like voluntarily like the measures that you have already mentioned, I think if one has to really start taking those measures, to a lot of companies, I will take back these suggestions and say that if you do this proactively, I don't think there could also be a need for a shutdown. So possibly.
I can't really say. So if you want to see the impact, it won't help if only 10% or 20% population is doing it and 80% is still kind of effect. Yeah, so maybe forced in the beginning, but what's the harm? It's not really impacting anyone's life.
Any concluding thoughts before we start taking the questions?
I don't want to conclude right now. It's okay. Let's take the questions.
So there is a question that has come from Samarth, which says that many entrepreneurs, so you must be aware of this, Samarth also has a plant in Daman. So many entrepreneurs have been forced to put up a solar power panel in Daman, another industrial area, else their power connection would be disconnected. How many firms from the 21% number that you provided forced implementation of renewable energy? So in Daman, you must be aware that companies are forced to put solar panels.
So most of our data is based on a TERI report, which is based on 2018-19 data. 19-20 data is not published as yet. So I would say that forced implementation started happening only about last year, and also not too much. It would hardly be 2% of the whole lot. Is my estimate right now.
Okay. There is second very valid question from Pranav, which says that with the current impact on the company's economy wise, how can it be ensured that non-essential from their perspective departments like sustainability doesn't get hit? I think everybody's looking at survival right now, what we were talking in the morning. So
totally, yeah. So that's what I was saying, that that's the feedback I've received from many people and in the top management of companies, big companies, who said that sustainability is non-essential. How can you say that your business sustainability is non-essential to your business? That
absolutely.
Yeah,
we are a part of environment, so everything is a part of sustainability.
Environment, it's part of your business. So tomorrow, say if you are depending on a certain agricultural product for your business, and suddenly the supply is stopped for whatever reason, for due to a wildfire or due to floods or whatever, will that not impact your business? So how is that non-essential? All I'm saying is that, I mean, don't try to do everything at the same time. See what is essential to you.
Small measurable steps.
Yeah. And in fact, if you start doing that, for example, if you start implementing circular economy in your business without any investment, in fact, it would start bringing you results. So it's a negative investment. Think about that. It's just about thinking on those lines, just about getting conscious. So your waste is someone else's raw material. You may in fact get paid for it. So start thinking on those lines. All we are trying to do is bringing, all of this knowledge and infrastructure together.
Should we move to the next one? So are there certain framework studies which point to the fact that investment into environment and sustainability with lower profits is much more long lasting than just profit based approach? This may also be relevant with current outbreak where investment in health and better social security with probable lower GDP may be more sustainable than just targeting higher GDP. The question comes with limited understanding of interdependency of different aspects. Investment into environment and sustainability is like, is it long lasting than profit based approach?
Of course it is. That ensures that you survive for the next 50 years instead of just the immediate 5 years.
I think we've also seen so many organizations who are reporting, like one Indian company that comes to our mind is say ITC, and their paper business. I think they have been very proactively been reporting a lot of these facts and figures proactively for so many years. And you can see these organizations also continuing for a longer period of time. Like, for the last 50 years, I think so many companies who are in the consumer food business also, they are reporting a lot of environment parameters without any pressure from others. So I think you can see them continuing and you can see them growing. So I think that's a...
In fact, there are several such examples, So there was again a company which was, I can't take names here, I'm sorry, but a large company, manufacturing company, which was implementing sustainability measures into their system since about 2 years, when they were hit with this huge increase in price of one particular raw material that they were using. But as part of their sustainability strategy, since this raw material was taking up 70% of the production, production input, they decided to put in some measures to reduce the consumption of this or find alternatives. Now, the moment the market was hit with this huge price increase, about 7 to 8 times, the company was on the verge of shutting down, but because they had already done their study and they were in a position to implement this, within about 6 months, they were able to revive their business instead of shutting down, because they had already figured out what the alternative could be to this raw material. So, that is sustainability, business sustainability.
So I think really understanding that what are the key elements of your business, where do they come from, what is like, what affects your raw materials, a study of that.
Yeah.
And which is where an expert like you would help such companies, I guess, if they have to do such a study then.
Yes.
So there's one more question which says, while one area or sector of SDG, for example, health and well-being, will gain prominence during or post-COVID, there is high possibility of other areas taking a backseat in terms of monetary contribution and focus. Your suggestion on how can we balance this? For example, poverty needs to be eliminated, which is also taking a hit during this pandemic, which is equally important.
I haven't really understood the question properly.
So currently it is, what is that priority is people and poverty. So will gain prominence post-COVID. There's a high possibility that, the immediate areas that need attention will take priority. And how can we, what are your suggestions? How can we balance this?
Well, I totally understand that your own survival is more important before you start looking at anyone else's survival and welfare. But the thing which has come out very clearly out of this whole crisis is that just taking care of yourself also may not ensure your survival. You still have to ensure that your community, your country, even the entire planet is in balance at least some balance, so that you are able to survive. Now, immediately, what can you do? Say, as an individual, you may have certain skills, certain capabilities. Why don't you start training other people on that? Why not promote education? So you see people around you who are not paying attention to, skill development or employability, or if you have a maid who's bringing in her kid to your place while he should be at school. So I mean, these are very small little gestures, actions that you can take to ensure that people are able to get out of that poverty. Now, as a company, what can you do? You can ensure that your labor force is continuously being upgraded without much investment. You can ensure that they are working much more efficiently, so that your costs can come down. So wastage has to be reduced. How do you look at your waste segregation? How do you look at your waste disposal? How can you achieve zero? So being net zero in every sense, net zero energy, carbon, water, waste. How can you ensure that you are actually doing whatever best you can in all of these aspects?
So, in fact, Anu, if I can add here, is a very valid point that, currently the most important thing is the livelihood of many people. And what we have seen is the biomedical waste that is generated from COVID is also is in large numbers, and it's a very big problem that needs a solution. Very recently, I think the data was also out in the newspapers that 1,500 kilos is what Bombay as a city generates on a day-to-day basis, because of the number of hospital beds, etc., that have been deployed. So in this time also, if there is some amount of awareness and some amount of conscious effort, that let us not, while we are fighting with one crisis, let us not invite another. I think that awareness and that consciousness, I think, can do very well. So we have been actually trying to find some solutions on this subject to ensure that, while we have a bigger battle to ensure that, we are fighting COVID, but we are not inviting another challenge. So I think that balance can be achieved.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one more question, when it comes to impact and its execution, do you think CSR is better than non-CSR norms like EPR, etc.?
Do you think CSR is better than non-CSR norms like EPR? The problem with EPR is, so although the intent is very much there and in place, execution is a problem. So the biggest problem with EPR is that nobody is able to understand it. So there is no guideline as to how to implement it and what is expected of us.
We are there for you then.
Sorry?
In that case, we are there for you. As an organization, we help companies with EPR.
Until last year, there was no clarity on this. I think you would agree with me on that.
Yes.
And now you have the expert, you have people who can provide the solution. So EPR has a very different intent from that of CSR, and both are very much essential in their own place. Do you agree with me? You are a better expert in EPR, I'm sure.
I think the question really said that if there are practical solutions which are directly tied up with the economic factors, then I think it is achievable. I think both have to go hand in hand. Yeah. The objective are very different. I think for an EPR, it was introduced so that companies who are manufacturing products which contains hazardous substances need to play a much larger role. And I think by governance, it was a good start. But there is data. So I think we are, as a country also, it is new subject for us. So I think both have its own objectives in place. A CSR sustainability fund, I think, is a much more long-term approach, is a much more proactive approach. I think EPR is something which is a rule that has been implemented, abiding by which is no choice. It has its own merits, but I think both have to go hand in hand.
Also, I think execution, implementation of EPR is something which is where I see a gap right now. Just like CSR, so when CSR became a regulation, the first couple of years, no one really knew what would happen if I don't comply,
Correct.
So yeah, so that sort of clarity is still needed, but we are getting there.
We are getting there. So maybe two more questions. Do you think after the crisis, companies will invest more in automation in their industry? And can this lead to unemployment in the future?
Well, the sort of skill you would need to operate that new technology would differ, of course, or you could also upgrade your current employees to be able to handle that. But I don't think we are reaching that stage anytime soon where you would not need people because you are able to, employ technology. So it may have some impact, but I think that would be marginal, at least in the near future.
Okay.
But companies sure will move towards automation. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. So we are there. I think a fantastic session. I would like to thank you again. It was so wonderful to have you with us, and to share your experiences, to share your perspective. We have okay. There is a question saying that can we discuss the donut model? So maybe please share that with us, and then maybe some last closing remarks from you.
Sure. So donut model is something that the leaders in Amsterdam have been promoting now. Very strong. So basically, I mean, the closure sets out the minimum to lead, the minimum anyone would need to lead a good life, derived from the UN Sustainable Development Goals and agreed by the world leaders of every political stripe. It ranges from food and clean water to a certain level of housing, sanitation, energy, education, healthcare, gender equality, and stuff like that. So minimum income, minimum wages. Anyone not attaining such minimum standards is living in the hole. In the spring donut.
Your voice is cracking.
By Earth.
No, your voice is cracking.
So basically, the outer ring specifies that. Should I switch off the video again?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Are you able to hear me better now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, so the outer ring of this donut the final
Okay, Anu. Anu,
it highlights the boundary across which humankind should not.
Anu, we can't hear you. Yeah, I think there's some bandwidth issue at your end.
I'm sorry about that. Are you able to hear me now or not at all?
Now it's better.
Okay, so all I'm saying is that in between these two rings is the good stuff, the dough, right? Where everyone's needs and that of the planet are being met. So that's what the donut model is. Now, this is the central premise of this model, and the goal of this is that economic activity should be about meeting the core needs of all, but within the means of the planet. Was that clear?
Not completely.
Hello.
Yeah, not completely, but couldn't hear. Anu, can't hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, Anu. So I think there are messages from our participants also. Can't hear you. Your voice is cracking actually.
Okay. Let me just try typing a message to explain this.
Okay, what I suggest is, if people really want to understand this in a little more detail, let them write to us, and then
Yeah.
maybe there could be something that we can share. I suggest that a lot of it that you have shared, I think, is very much I'm sure understood, and I think it was a great session. With the donut model, anybody wants to understand, please write either to us or Anu directly, and I'm sure Anu will help us
Yeah.
understand this much better.
Yes. So my email ID is right here, and you can write to me anytime, and we can connect offline as well. And I'm sorry about the network issue. Can't help it.
Anu, last closing remarks from you.
It has been great, Karan. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope we can maybe dig deeper into certain specific issues, later on sometime.
I think
And the questions from the audience have been great as well.
great.
So thank you so much, everyone.
So, everyone who's participated today, thank you so much for building this ecosystem stronger. We believe that the environment and the sustainability ecosystem is so strong, and we are always so encouraged to see participation from equally passionate people like you. And again, a big thank you to Anu for sharing this time again. Maybe, like you rightly said, we can select a particular topic and maybe deep dive into it again.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy to.
Stay home, stay safe. Take care.